Tony and Tony show. Tony
Hello,
Davis.
hello, Tony Hauser.
Yes,
How are you
hello.
doing?
I am doing great. I am doing good. There's actually some light. Well, not that much on your side, but
No,
that's
no, it's good. It's light.
that's
It's warm. It's like 10 degrees warmer than it was yesterday,
yeah,
which is
that's
good.
what I
But
mean.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and yeah, I'm finally coming up steam delivering content to you, so that's also good
It is.
because we have an article of the famous author. Did it? It's me.
Tony Hauser
That's me. Yeah.
delivers.
Finally. After
Yes,
fine. Well, there are more. There's more in the pipeline, but
there is. Yes, I'm nesting on a few, so
yeah,
there's
yeah,
more coming.
it's more coming. It's more coming. And this is actually an article in the same well series as Phil was writing because it's about the Flyway CLI.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So the Flyway CLI now incorporates functionality to allow you to compare databases, discover the differences between them, um, generate scripts to remove those differences, or and all that sort of functionality. It's all now. Previously, it was in a separate CLI, or obviously you had it available through the desktop graphical
Yeah,
user interface, but or a separate CLI called Flyway Dev, which you wrote about previously.
exactly.
But
And that was actually the uh, reason to write this article to show the Flyway desktop development workflow was able to run without Flyway desktop by just using the CLI. And previously
exactly
it was
right.
the Flyway dev CLI, and now it's the Flyway CLI. And we have a diagram for that. This is this beautiful diagram.
It is. So it basically shows you what the Flyway desktop workflow essentially was. You make changes to your local development database. You capture them in the schema model, which is your object level representation of the state of the database.
Yeah, and you do that by Flyway diff model. That's the new keyword for that.
Yeah, so and then yeah, exactly right. You're diffing your development database and the schema model and keeping it up to date. And then once those changes are in the schema model, you're then effectively saying what development changes have I finalized but that aren't captured in a migration. And that's your second diff.
Yeah.
And you generate your script, you test it, you make sure you're happy with it, and then you can apply it.
Yeah, then you can migrate other databases that were on the previous version because
Exactly right.
that's what the normal Flyway workflow is all about. There are different Flyway workflows these days, but this article won't go into that.
No, this is a migrations-based approach.
It's
Yeah.
a migration based approach. And to be even cooler, we are really the two cool kids are here, Tony and Tony, because the
Yep.
other Tony made this diagram where
Indeed.
yeah, and I kind of synced the steps because in the previous article I used ABC and now I'm using the same numbers. So here you see on disk and on the database what is actually happening in those steps.
It's yeah. It's basically just drills into the section of what actually happens when you save save your changes to the schema model and then use them to generate a script, because perhaps not go too much detail, but the schema comparison technology can't compare directly to a migrations folder. So you're trying to say to it what's in the schema model that isn't in a migration, and it goes, okay, I can do that, but I'm going to manifest the migration folder in the shadow database.
Yeah.
So effectively the comparison is between the shadow and the schema model, and then from that it generates a script. It runs it on the shadow to make sure, okay, I can produce that new version without errors, and once it validates it, it saves it.
Yeah, and so this diagram perfectly visualize how this all works and what the role is of the shadow database. But enough about the
Exactly right.
shadow database because there's enough documentation about the shadow database.
Yes.
This article is written for a specific version of Flyway Desktop, but it's basically every step, every tab you have on your Flyway Desktop, but then in script. So
Exactly right.
when
It's a
you
whole workflow explained
yeah
in script with all the new commands
yeah
explained. So the diff command, which does the comparison, from which you get a diff artifact, which you, as you describe, is a kind of list of differences with IDs.
which you can take and just that use it. And it all runs on Flyway environments, and Flyway environments are also linked from the article to the documentation. And
Exactly right.
and I'm a bit tempted to even write an article about it, because when Flyway introduced the TOML files with the environments, I wasn't really a fan. But over time, I got a real fanboy. I want environments for everything because it just runs on your user side. It's not in the project. It can be in the project, but for me, that's a bad practice. And having that set up right, and even with some automation, because I know a few guys who run some automation in it to generate it for themselves based on a template. Might be a new article, Tony. So if you're up to it,
I think it would benefit a lot of people, because I struggle to understand having got so used to the old style conf configuration. The TOML is much more powerful, but it takes you've got to get your head around it. So another topic for another day. But yes,
okay, cool.
And it goes through, and like you say, you just go through every step of the workflow, showing okay, the generate migrations tab. How does that work in script? It's the diff generate.
Those are the new keywords. Yeah. You
they're
can
the new
just
keywords, but so the diff is between, as we just said, the schema model and the migrations, or effectively the build, what they call the build environment, the shadow database. And then generate give you the script.
Yeah, and eventually that script will be used to migrate every environment, for example, the prod environment, to this specific version that was in your migrate file.
Exactly. You're capturing all the changes. This is very specific about Friday, and this is one of its biggest strengths. Is it's a version migration. You're going from a specific known version in source control to another known version in source control.
And when I wrote the first version of article like this, I used the logging of Flyway Desktop to see under the hood what was happening. With all those commands. Mm-hmm. You can still do that if you just put your log level for both and check out the log files.
I missed that little detail, actually. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
And for example, which I'm pointing out here, you can see that Git is used to do the version control steps, which can be interesting. But maybe you're interested in other commands that are run on the background, and you maybe want to automate them. So, but that was actually the basis of the base of this first version of the article. But now the documentation, because it's no longer a beta, but it's just in the Flyway CLI. Now the documentation is very rich about it. So please read my article, but also read the documentation. There are a lot of use cases and tutorials written down in the documentation part. And I don't think this is the last CLI article. There will be a lot more.
There's more coming. There's more coming. But this is fundamentally, like you say, if you use that workflow where you save changes to the schema model, generate scripts, but you want to automate it, this is the article you should read.
Thank you, Tony.
Yes.
And with those wise words, I think we have to say goodbye to the audience, and till next time.
Till next time. Cheers, Tony.
Cheers.